Hello and welcome to Rauta's Where's the Best with Slayer. One Russian accent, I had no slightest idea. Seriously speaking, I'm gonna make an unpopular statement, an unpopular opinion about Slayer, which in case here is Where's the Best. Why unpopular? Well, you will soon find out. Now the thing is, Slayer has many different eras with many different albums and as such so many divided opinions which way to go, which ones are the best or the favorite ones as the thing is. I mean, you can really measure music scientifically, so what you have basically is your own opinion and you can't just only back it up whatever ticks your boat, whatever rocks it. So here we have Slayer's discography on Rauta with unpopular takes. Oh, let's see how it goes. First, let's give the Slayer discography a little bit of a recap. Now, this is the reason why Slayer is featured here today. I mean, it's 40 years today, this year, not the exact date, of course. And that is the reason why I decided to go with Slayer, because at least a couple of years it has been in the news that Slayer has quit for good. They're not going to do more albums, not maybe like even tour, because that happened like 2 years ago, like before COVID. I mean, technically speaking, it seems it's active, at least here in Metal Archives. Nothing has been confirmed, and you know, sometimes bands actually do make comebacks. But as the official wording seems to be, Slayer is not active anymore, so we will live with that information. And if it ever comes back, well, that's a good news, so you can't really lose with this output. Now, one thing which I heard recently when I was talking about Slayer discography was that it seems like, according to some people, it seems whatever Slayer ticks you the most depends which age you are, what kind of music you're into, and all that stuff. Now, it kind of holds water to a certain degree. That is, to some degree, it's kind of a believable. Yeah, if you are coming from, say, a heavy metal background, you're kind of bound to like the earlier stuff, which is clearly more, one could say, British heavy metal influenced, and the later stuff, which is kind of a rawer and faster and more violent and aggressive and kind of different ones. And then we have this later era even, which is then again, once again, a little bit different. Some were comparing to new metal and all that stuff, but in my opinion, that statement is very, very much false. I don't know then again which kind of new metal bands they were listening to who make these statements, but I would never go as far as to say like, okay, Slayer's new metal era reminds not even closely bands like Korn or Limp Bizkit or Linkin Park and stuff like that. Now, whatever, people are kind of bound to make those statements, especially if they really hate something. It's not like a Korn fan who's like, hey, I really like Slayer's that era because, hey, it reminds me of Korn. There might be one or two persons of those as well. I don't know, but it's not likely. Anyway, the thing here is Slayer, throughout their 35 years or so of active record making era. I mean, if you're counting when they actually started and when they quit doing albums, well, technically less than 35 years, but more than 30 anyway. And it's an interesting career all over. But the thing here is, the band also, as many other big names with later years, kind of started to slow down with records. I mean, if you take a look at the first years, 83, 85, 86, 80, that was very hasty time, you know, until all the way 1990. And that when it started to kind of slow down. Even though even in the 90s there were these years when Slayer was basically making an album every couple of years. But since 2000s, you know, it kind of started to slow down eventually. And what we can see is that Slayer wasn't really the best in the later years, of course, partially because Jeff Hanneman unfortunately passed away due to health problems and all. But anyway, this is not to talk about Slayer history and importance in the thrash metal scene or metal scene in the first place. That would be a totally different video that would be take hours full of time and interviews and all that stuff. And unfortunately for me, I never got to interview Slayer before they quit, because last time I checked and asked when they were touring here in Finland, well, they weren't doing any more interviews, I guess, partially like I was. Because what there is to say when you were about to quit, that was the answer which I got. Kind of makes sense, but from my point of view, it definitely makes no sense. I mean, usually when people are on the twilight of their careers, whatever it is, that career, they're more like, okay, now it's time to recap, tell the whole story as a biography or whatever. Maybe that's in the making, who knows, who cares? Well, I do, but that's a different story. Anyway, I'm gonna have some notes here in my phone, which I'm not gonna show you on the screen because it kind of makes no sense having them all finished and all that stuff. So I'm just taking a look on my phone every now and then to make those detail points which I probably will otherwise forget. So which kind of order I would go if I have to pick worst to best? Like, once again, this is unpopular opinion. I want to make that clear because nobody's gonna make, you cannot really say that. I mean, I can and I will. It's my personal opinion. Like, if I had to start choosing which albums are my least favorite, which one I would take with me, that's the reason what is going on here. But I know some people are going to be totally different opinion about this list. Something that is very clear already with these review scores, and for example, Metal Archives, it's clear that some people fancy most like Hellweight and Show No Mercy, and the later albums are so many disappointed with so many people. I mean, take a look at the Repentless with 50% on average with 17 reviews. That tells a lot of, I don't know if we can call the word hate, but definitely dissing. And same goes for God Hates Us All with 48, which is even a lot worse than, Diabologous Musica, which is often seen as the worst one. Anyway, my order is going to be very, very different, vastly. And it's time to start it with Undisputed Attitude from 1996, which, curiously enough, has 80% on average. Now, why this is my least favorite Slayer album is for two reasons. First of all, I never was a punk head. I never liked punk music, and this is a punk compilation with cover tracks. And because of that, the second reason is obviously this is not Slayer original material. Most of the stuff anyway. So the thing here is, that's why I don't like this very much. I mean, it's listenable, it's kind of clear that it has the Slayer feeling on it all over, even though it's, made of punk tracks and all, but definitely doesn't speak to me, never has. I remember listening to it when it came out and I was gravely disappointed because, first of all, it wasn't original Slayer tracks, and second of all, I really didn't get anything out of these tracks. So I was like, okay, I can live with this, but I'm not going to have it on my shelf. I mean, in my collection. And so I sold it away years and years ago. And now that I got back, well, never hasn't cured anything for me. I still feel like, yeah, this is one of those albums for collectors only, not for Slayer heads so much. But maybe punk people will like it. I don't know. Or people coming from punk background but being metalheads. Who knows? Who cares? If I had to pick one song that I would like to hear it most, I would go with the, not the one of the DRI tracks. I guess people would be guessing that, but I would say it's Guilty of Being White, because that's kind of a groovy track. There's kind of a strong feeling with the track. It's short and sweet, and it kind of goes right to the point, very beginning. But for me, this is not an album I kind of want to go back to. So that would be my least favorite of Slayer. And then becomes the unpopular opinion is in a serious way, because I would say Show No Mercy is my second least favorite, and this is gonna be shocking for people who just think this is the best Slayer album. Now, once again, there are a couple of reasons why I don't prefer listening to Show No Mercy and why I don't even keep it in my collection anymore. And the first reason is, I think it's kind of a hit and miss. Now, first of all, there are a couple of really, really good tracks, make no mistake. Songs like Antichrist or Die by the Sword, Cryonics, and Black Magic, obviously. These are really, really strong tracks, so it's like, so why don't you have it in your release then, man? Now the thing here is, half of the album is, in my opinion, kind of close to mediocrity with their heavy metal tunes. Tommy Raya's vocals are kind of high-pitched. It's not as raw as later on, not as aggressive and all that stuff. So for me, this feels like a lightweight Slayer in so many ways. Like a fat-free Slayer, if you care for that comparison. So even though there are good songs, if I want to go back to these songs, I would definitely just listen to Live Undead, which then again has like the better versions of these songs and better track listing, mind you. Everything here is better executed, but that's a live album and it's not a studio full-length album, so it's not even included in this list. But I would definitely pick Live Undead over Show No Mercy. So maybe that is one of the reasons why I have Show No Mercy so low on this list. So now people are already confused, like, okay, you put Show No Mercy on as your second least favorite album on Slayer, so what can we trust you? You're gonna probably love Diabologous Music and blah blah blah. No, in fact, I would put Diabologous Music only a little bit ahead of Show No Mercy, not because it has great tracks, so many. Oh, I forgot to mention which track I would go with the show numbers, that would be Black Magic, something I have actually covered with Horna some 20 plus years ago. Anyway, forgot some of the lyrics, mind you. Someone's got to remind me of that. Anyway, if I wanted to tell you about Diabolical Musica, yeah, it definitely has a different era, kind of a Slayer vibe with it. But it's a lot heavier also than so many of the albums. And even though it has this kind of a, what you would call, new metal feeling, well, I disagree with that, but it's not a metalcore album either. It's just not old school trash. It's kind of a new wave. And then we are talking about almost year 2000 when this album came out. 1998 to be precise. And I guess, you know, after so many years Slayer doing this and that, changing already with the South of Heaven, they were kind of bound to go for different directions. And they also had Divine Intervention already out by this time. So they were changing. They were looking for some new and fresh ideas, I guess. And this wasn't the right direction, but in my opinion, it's better than what the overall reputation tells you. I definitely know it's not for everybody, but I still think it's not that bad. It's actually, in my opinion, quite a good album, even though doesn't really have those kind of classic kind of tracks. But I would have it here in my list, and the song which I would pick from this one, where I did mark it up, is the Love to Hate. Now this already tells you quite a bit of these songs, and I actually have to check out my list, which I went for when I was listening to this a little while ago, because I couldn't do the video right away when I was listening and finished with this track. So this is one of those albums which I don't remember instantly like the hit songs of. So that kind of tells you, but it's very consistent in otherwise, you know, so I can't really bitch about too much about it. Now on we go with that, and next one I would choose Repentless from 2015, the Swan Song album by the band. This is also something that I remember liking it somewhat, quite nicely when it came out, like 8 out of 10. And when I was listening to it now, I thought I had ranked it higher, and I was like, man, is this only like 8 out of 10? I mean, it's kind of good, like Diabolical Musica, but it's great. And once again, it has pretty much the same problem. It's consistent in style and quality, but it doesn't have those highlight moments. So it's like a weaker versions, in my opinion, of what World Painted Blood, which has more aggression and better, catchier songwriting is. But it's one of those modern Slayer, one could say, third era albums, and while it's very consistent and listenable, it's not really memorable in that sense. So not something that I would probably say it's going to be a future classic. But it's definitely better, once again, than what is usually said about it, in my opinion, that is. And if I had to pick a song, it would be the title track, Repentless. It's totally listenable, it's just not that great. Now, what else? Then I would go to God Hates Us All. That is definitely also quite a bit better than what people give it credit for. Now, it feels kind of too lengthy in a way, even though it's not that. But this one actually has a few, what I would call hit songs, like Payback, Bloodline, and definitely Disciple, which would be my pick for the track. This is one of the most aggressive Slayer albums of all time. Could be really the most aggressive, even if it's not kind of raining blood fast and, you know, intense. But it's definitely kind of hateful. It feels like there's a lot of hate. Just reading Disciple lyrics or Payback, and you get like, okay, these guys are angry. They might be older, but they're angry. Definitely a kind of a good album already, and in my opinion, a notch up from Diabolical Musica and also Repentless. So I would go that ways. And like I said, Disciple is the song. In my opinion, it's one of the better songs all in all, which I would then pick for this one. Curious enough, then I would go all the way to Hell Waits. Now, why this is in the middle and not on the top is another question you might be asking. Now, once again, even though this is somewhat better than, well, clearly a lot better in my opinion than South of Heaven, and has great songs like Necrophiliac or Hell Waits, in my opinion, this is still having a little bit of that hit and miss moments. Those hit songs are really good, but then again, the other ones are just good. I mean, they're not groundbreaking. So once again, this is not as consistent in quality as some of the later ones, even though this has better songs. So it's kind of a weird album for me. But definitely now this has Tom Araya's vocals a lot better, and the guitars, playing the guitar and drums, and everything here is kind of a more intense. This was definitely going forward to Raining Blood, which is often seen one of the best metal albums of all times. But this is because of its inconsistency. I wouldn't put it in my top 3 or anything like that. But it's really one of the better albums, really, really good ones. And now I am bouncing back and forth here. Oh, and my song for Hell Awaits would be Hell Awaits. Now going back and forth between the newer ones is a curious thing because then I have a hard time choosing which way to go. There are some albums which are, in my opinion, kind of a par with each other. I would go as far as to say World Painted Blood comes next. And now we're in the middle of Slayer discography, roughly give or take. And this is something that is very intense. I think it's, once again, a lot better than what it's credited for. It's very aggressive, very hateful, but kind of simple. It kind of shows that these guys wanted to do those punk riffs. Some of the riffs are just very, very simple and aggressive and intense. It doesn't have any kind of technicalities as well as so much as some of the previous albums in the past. So I think this is, once again, going back to the roots in so many ways. And for that reason, it could be a little bit of a disappointment for some people. But I would still say it's a good album and has great songs as well. Like American, for example, or Psychopathy Red, Hate Worldwide. But my favorite one would be Beauty True Order, which again reminds me of Divine Intervention in a way. It's kind of slow tempo stuff, but kind of a dark and sinister feeling. A really good track in my opinion. What it would be roughly along the same lines, but very different in terms of being a Slayer album, would be Divine Intervention from 1994. Now, this is, in my opinion, Slayer's death metal album. Some of those riffs I can just hear in my head, like ringing as in a death metal way. Kind of a very heavy and could be with the growly vocals. Kind of a very different from what Slayer was doing with Raining Blood, South of Heaven, Seasons in the Abyss, and all that stuff. But in my opinion, very, very powerful album. Not as catchy, but still very, very good work overall. It's short and sweet, and that is one of the reasons why it's really easy to get into. But like I said, it kind of lacks in terms of being a catchy one. But there is no weak track at all. There are really good tracks like Killing Fields, Serenity in Murder, Divine Intervention, and Ditto Head, which I would be picking up for this one. That would be the track to check out in case you were gonna check out Divine Intervention. In my opinion, underrated album for sure. Then I would go back and a little bit of newer one, and only an inch better is an album called Christ Illusion. Now, this I don't remember getting as much flack as some of the newer ones, but still not seen as kind of on par with classics, which is very different for me, because in my opinion, this is a very, very strong album. Once again, quite short, less than 40 minutes in total, and in my opinion, very, very consistent in quality. Everything here is really good. It sounds definitely 100% Slayer, from vocals to guitar sound, riffs, and all that stuff. In my opinion, this is a really, really good album. I would say like 9 out of 10. And if I had to pick a song, it would be Eyes of the Insane, which is also the video track. One of those kind of evil sounding, sinister tracks. Really good video, by the way. You should definitely check it out. In my opinion, really good album that gets often overlooked because it's not one of those classic albums from the 80s. And everybody knows that 80s Slayer is the best. No denying that. Anyway, now that we have already reached like the top of the list, which way to go? We have already Show No Mercy, Hell Awaits, Click, Click, Click. We have Divine Intervention, Undisputed Adibus, Diabolus and Musica, God Hates Us All, Christ Illusion, World Painted Blood, Repentance. What there is to see? Well, yeah, the top 3. And these would be interesting because all of these are really, really some of my favorite ones. Well, the favorite ones of thrash metal. Now, which way to go? Well, South of Heaven from 1988 would be the third best Slayer album for me. Now, this is very different from Raining Blood, and I can imagine it had been a culture shock if you had been a teenager during the years when this came out. I was a teenager, but I certainly didn't hear this in 1988. It was a few years later. But this is so strong album, even with the kind of a slow tempo songwriting like, South of Heaven. But the songs like, South of Heaven and Behind the Crooked Cross, very rocking thrash metal song. And of course the classic Mandatory Suicide. Man, I just love it. Read Between the Lies, yes, definitely good. The only one which I really don't like is this cover song, Dissident Aggressor. I think it's kind of weak here, but well, it's a cover song, so it doesn't really count that much. But in my opinion, this is very, very a good album, and it kind of showed that Slayer is able to renew themselves. It's also to kind of able to shed its skin, become a new band in terms of already having a few albums out, only a few years of existence, and already they're like renewing. In so many ways, it could be seen as Slayer's Black Album, if you will. It's kind of a tad different, and at the same time, it's also familiar. And then I would pick my second... South of Heaven. Well, if I had to pick a song, Mandatory Suicide. Something that we already covered with my very first band in 1994. We played death metal, but Slayer fit totally in that stuff. Seasons in the Abyss. Almost 10 out of 10 album for me. A really ugly cover. Never liked it. But the song. Man, this album is almost perfect for me. I like all the songs here. I could pick any of these songs and say, yeah, that's it. But obviously there are songs which are more to my favorite. But, the songs that are definitely worth mentioning are like Blood Red, War Ensemble, Expendable You, Dead Skin Mask. I like even Skeleton Society, which seems to be, dividing people. And of course there's Hallowed Point, Board of Fire. But my favorite track would be the title track. Once again, Seasons in the Abyss, something that we covered with my first black metal band in the late 90s with Nightside. I really love the track. I think it was the music video that kind of sold this song and album to me. I really like it. One of the best Slayer tracks of all time. And no surprise, 1986, the classic of the classic, Raining Blood. This is a perfect metal album for me. Definitely one of my favorite albums of all time. Could be the album of all times for me. But obviously I don't want to, write it that in stone, because, there's so many good albums by many different bands which could be competing for this number one slot. But in Slayer discography, no competition. This is the album for me. Everything starts with Angel of Death. My favorite song, obviously, in this one. But then it continues piece by piece, which is often overlooked. One of the greatest Slayer songs, in my opinion. And Necrophobic, Altar of Sacrifice, Jesus Saves, which we also covered. Criminal Insane, Reborn. All of these are good. But most importantly, the best and the last song are the best one. Angel of Death and Raining Blood. Everything in between are really, really, really good. But they don't have anything in competition when it comes to the track that starts and ends the track. And less than 30 minutes. You don't really need more than that when you have this kind of song selection. So overall, really, 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 really good album. Like a perfect 10 out of 10. So all in all, what I'm thinking about Slayer is like it's 90% for me. And the rest of the 10%, I don't give so much damn about it. But I still think they never made a weak album. Even Undisputed Attitude is better than mediocre album. Doesn't matter what kind of genre we're talking about, but it's the least interesting for me. So I don't know. I am thinking this is a really weird order because I like some of the old stuff like Hellwage and Raining Blood and South of Heaven a lot. But then again, I also like some of the newer ones a lot. And it all gets mixed. And this is, in my books, a sign that the band is really, really good, because they never kind of were out. They never became this one of those bands that I don't want to go back. For example, I don't have this thing with Iron Maiden. I never cared too much about what Iron Maiden did after 80s, or Metallica for that sense. But with Slayer, everything from 80s to late 2015. So it's all there. Really one of my favorite bands, and I cannot praise too much how much I've enjoyed Slayer over the years. Something that all people, doesn't matter what kind of metal you're listening to, should give it a chance. I know it's not for everybody. Thrash metal ain't not the most popular in terms of being a genre of metal music. I mean, people are like, yeah, black metal is the number one. Who cares about Slayer and thrash metal? Who cares about death metal? But for me, this is the kind of a band that ties all these genres together. They have the darkness of black metal at some points. They have the aggression of thrash metal, and they have the songwriting that has inspired a lot of death metal. So they all have these different ideas put together. Then they even have this hint of heavy metal with Show No Mercy, and even punk with Undisputed Attitude. Anyway, a great band in my opinion, something that I will be listening to the very day I die. And I hope you will enjoy Slayer as well, and maybe even revisit some of those albums that you thought they're shit because your friend told you so, or maybe because you didn't like them first time you gave it a go. But I don't know, it's not for everybody, that's kind of a given. Listen to Slayer or listen not, I don't care, I will, and that's all I want to say. Thank you for watching. Should you have your comments or your favorite where's the best list here, put them on the comments box below and I will get back to you. Meanwhile, take care and bye-bye.